Picture your tomato plant 2 weeks from now, wilted, crispy at the edges. Soil around it, cracked open, like a dry riverbed, pulling away from the sides of the raised bed you spent an entire weekend building. You watered it yesterday. And you watered it the day before that. You have been watering it every single day, dragging a hose across the yard in the heat, and still the thing is dying. In front of you, now zoom out. Your water bill climbed again this month. The grocery store wants $4 for a single bell pepper. That tastes like cardboard and traveled 1,400 miles in a refrigerated truck to reach your hand, and here you are, standing in your own backyard surrounded by dirt that refuses to cooperate, watching your lettuce bolt before you ever get a single salad out of it. This isn't a gardening problem. This is a system problem. You've been placed inside a loop that was never designed to let you win. The hose dries the surface and bakes the roots. The sprinkler throws half its water into the air, where the sun steals it before it ever touches a leaf. The drip line clogs, cracks, leaks at the fittings, and costs you $60 every spring to replace. Every method you were taught assumes you'll be there every single day, performing maintenance on a system that fights the physics of how soil actually moves water. And when you inevitably miss a day, when life pulls you away, the whole thing collapses. Meanwhile, the soil itself has been screaming the answer at you for thousands of years. Soil is not a dead container you pour liquid into. It is a living sponge with its own suction force, its own rhythm, its own ability to pull moisture exactly where roots are hungry, and stop the flow the instant they have had enough. No timer, no valve, no sensor. Just capillary tension, the same force that draws water up through a paper towel, operating silently beneath your feet every hour of every day. The problem is that every conventional irrigation method works against that force. A hose dumps water from above, flooding the top inch and leaving the root zone starving 3 inches down. There is a flower bed I haven't touched in 15 days. No hose, no watering can, no drip line, no mulch, nothing visible on the surface at all, and the leaves are wide open, deep green, the soil beneath them still cool and damp to the touch. What changed was not effort. What changed was that I stopped fighting gravity and started letting the soil do what it already knows how to do. I buried a single water source below the surface, onsen, walked away. But here is the part that will either save your garden or sabotage it within 48 hours. There is one detail on the Cap 1 decision most people get wrong on the first attempt, and it is the reason their buried bottle stops delivering water before the week is out. It is small, it is simple, and it is the exact line between a system that sustains your plants for months and one that fails before your next grocery run. You stare at that cracked soil, and your first instinct is to fix it. BY something, a bag of premium potting mix from the garden center, a bottle of liquid fertilizer with a green leaf on the label, maybe a soil conditioner that promises to restore vitality. And that instinct is exactly where the trap closes around you. Here is what nobody at the hardware store will explain. That bag of nutrient-rich soil you just paid $12 for has been sterilized, heated, processed, stripped of every living organism that once made dirt actually function. You're buying a corpse and expecting it to breathe life into your garden. The moment you pour it around your tomato plant, you've replaced a complex underground civilization with an inert brown substance that holds water for a week and then compacts into something closer to concrete than earth. And the fertilizer, think about what it actually does. You dissolve salts into the root zone. The plant absorbs them because it has no choice. For a few days, the leaves green up, and you feel like a genius. But underground, those salts are scorching the microscopic fungal threads that were trying to connect your plant to a nutrient exchange network, millions of years older than agriculture itself. Every granule you sprinkle is a small act of arson against the one system that could have fed your plant for free. Now picture the guy next door who rototills his bed every spring. He calls it preparation, but what he is actually doing is shredding miles of mycorrhizal hyphae into confetti. Those threads take months to regrow. He has reset the clock to 0, and his soil will spend the entire growing season trying to rebuild what he destroyed in 20 minutes with a machine. So he compensates with more fertilizer, more water, more intervention. The dependency loop tightens, and the receipt at the register gets longer every season. This is the architecture of the scam. It is not a conspiracy in a boardroom. It is a design flaw baked into every product on the shelf. Herbicides don't just kill weeds. They annihilate the bacterial colonies that decompose organic matter into plant-available nutrients. Without those colonies, your soil cannot feed itself. So you buy more product. Tilling doesn't just loosen earth. It exposes the top layer to UV radiation that sterilizes microbial life and accelerates moisture loss. So you water more and mulch more and spend more. Each solution sold to you generates the next problem you will need to solve with your wallet. You were never bad at gardening. You were participating in a system that profits from your soil staying dead. A living soil doesn't need you to feed it. It has fungi bartering phosphorus for sugar with plant roots. It has bacteria converting atmospheric nitrogen into forms a tomato can drink. It has protozoa hunting those bacteria and excreting the leftovers right where the roots can grab them. That entire economy runs on zero external inputs, but only if you stop killing it every time you reach for a product. The buried bottle in that flower bed works precisely because it sidesteps this whole machinery. It doesn't inject chemicals. It doesn't disturb structure. It delivers water at the pace the soil requests it, through capillary tension, the same force that has moved moisture through undisturbed ground since before humans walked upright. The soil pulls only what it needs. Nothing is forced, and nothing is burned, but understanding why that works, why passivity outperforms intervention, requires you to see the law that modern agriculture deliberately buried under marketing budgets and fertilizer spreaders. A law so simple, it feels like cheating once you finally hear it. There is a law written into every handful of dirt on this planet, and nobody taught it to you, because there is nothing to sell once you understand it. Picture this: a plastic bottle buried in a garden bed, untouched for 15 days, and the soil around it stays dark, cool, the leaves above it stay open and fat like they just drank. That isn't magic, that is physics. So ancient, it predates every irrigation company that ever invoiced you. The principle has a name: passive capillary irrigation, but forget the name for a second and watch what actually happens at the particle level. Soil is not a dead sponge waiting for you to pour water on it. Soil is a network of microscopic channels between grains, and those channels exert pull, real, measurable mechanical pull. When the ground around a water source dries even slightly, the capillary tension between soil particles increases, and that tension physically draws moisture out of any reservoir in contact with it. The drier the surrounding ground gets, the harder it pulls. The moment moisture reaches equilibrium, the pull stops, flow ceases on its own. No electricity. The soil itself is the regulator. Now flip that picture upside down and look at what you've been doing every evening with a hose. You stand there flooding the surface, and gravity immediately starts dragging that water straight down, past the root zone, into depths your lettuce will never reach. The top 2 inches dry, out by noon the next day, so you water again. You aren't irrigating, you're running a leaking faucet against gravity and calling it gardening. Meanwhile, the actual mechanism that could do the job sits encoded in the soil structure itself, waiting for a reservoir it can pull from. Here is where the forgotten code becomes almost absurd in its simplicity. A 2-liter PET bottle with tiny perforations, buried at root depth, filled once, and sealed. The seal matters. Closed lid creates a slight vacuum inside as water leaves, which slows the outflow to a pace the soil can absorb without saturation. An open lid lets air rush in, and the bottle drains in hours, overwhelms the capillary network, and creates the same waterlogged mess a hose would. One detail, the lid, is the difference between a system that self-regulates for a week and one that fails before Wednesday. Think about what that means. The soil is pulling exactly the volume it needs, at exactly the rate it needs, delivering it laterally through those microchannels directly into the root zone. Roots don't sit in puddles, and they don't gasp between floods. They grow toward the constant signal of moisture, the way a vine grows toward light. The root architecture itself reshapes around this steady source, becoming denser, more efficient, less dependent on surface conditions. and the feedback loop is visible to the naked eye when the bottle is full. Internal pressure keeps the plastic slightly rigid above the soil line. When the reservoir empties, the plastic goes slack. You squeeze it, feel nothing. Refill, close the lid, walk away. No guesswork, no moisture meter, no app. The bottle tells you with the honesty of simple physics. Under moderate temperatures. The cycle runs 5 to 7 days per fill. In heat above 30 degrees. Shortens to 3 or 4 on overcast stretches. It can coast past 10. You learn the rhythm in 2 weeks just by watching. And after that, the system asks almost nothing from you. What it gives back is a root zone that never panics, never floods, never bakes into that pale crust you've been fighting all summer. This is the law that was always there, written into the friction between water, molecules, and mineral grains long before anyone sold you a drip kit. And once you understand it, the next question becomes purely geometric. Where exactly do you place these reservoirs so the capillary field covers every plant without dead zones or overlap? Here is the part most people never arrive at, because they are still busy overcomplicating everything. You have a plastic bottle, not a fancy one, not a special agricultural product you order online, just a used soda bottle from your recycling bin, and that bottle buried once in the dirt. Beside your plants, will water your garden for you while you sleep, while you work, while you leave town for 2 weeks straight. The soil does the thinking. Picture what actually happens underground. You punch a few tiny holes in that bottle, fill it, cap it with one small vent hole in the lid, and bury it up to the neck next to your vegetables. Now the soil around it behaves like a living sponge. When the ground dries out, capillary tension physically pulls moisture through those pinprick holes. When the soil has enough, the pull stops. Bottle holds its water. No sensor, no valve, no programming. The earth itself decides when to drink and when to pause. You did one thing, one time, and a self-regulating irrigation cycle switched on beneath your feet. Think about what you just eliminated. You eliminated the daily chore of dragging a hose. You eliminated the guesswork of how much to water. You eliminated the guilt of leaving town and coming back to wilted leaves. A 2-liter bottle beside a tomato plant can carry that plant for days in mild weather. A 5-liter bottle paired with a layer of straw mulch on the surface, and suddenly you're looking at 15 days of hands-off moisture in winter, over a week even in summer. Heat. The straw blocks evaporation from above, the bottle feeds from below. Between those 2 layers, your soil stays in a moisture range that roots love, without you lifting a finger after the initial setup. Now here is the counterintuitive piece that separates this from a gimmick. You actually have to do less for it to work better. If you water the bed every day on top of the buried bottle, you override the capillary signal. The soil never gets dry enough to pull from the bottle, so the bottle just sits there full and useless. And you wonder why the trick failed. The system needs you to step back. It needs your absence. The moment you stop intervening, the physics kicks in, and the underground conversation between bottle and root zone begins. Less attention from you equals more consistent hydration for the plant. That is not laziness dressed up as a method. That is how moisture actually moves through soil particles. When you stop disrupting the gradient, and the mistakes that kill it are laughably small, forget to punch that single vent hole in the cap, and vacuum pressure locks the water inside after a few hours. Drill holes too wide, 5 millimeters or more, and gravity dumps the entire bottle in a day, drowning the roots and leaving nothing for tomorrow. Plant into bone-dry soil without one initial hand watering, and capillary action never activates, because there is no moisture bridge between the bottle wall and the surrounding earth. Each of these errors takes seconds to prevent one pinhole in the lid, holes no bigger than a heated nail tip, one good soak before you walk away. After that, the system runs itself. Scale it to your reality. Living in an apartment with a balcony pot, a 500 milliliter bottle with 3 or 4 holes handles a single container. Ground level bed, baking under 8 hours of direct sun. Add 20% more bottles than you think you need, because transpiration climbs with light exposure. Young fruit tree. 2 5-liter bottles buried symmetrically, 30 centimeters from the trunk, and you move them outward as the root system expands over the seasons. You aren't buying a product. You're positioning trash in the ground at the right spacing and letting physics handle distribution. The only ongoing task is a gentle squeeze of the bottle every couple of weeks to confirm water is still flowing. If the soil around it feels dry while the bottle feels full, a particle of clay plugged a hole, clean it, refill, don't. You're looking at is a complete irrigation layer built from garbage, installed in an afternoon, demanding almost nothing from you afterward. And when you combine it with what comes next, the way these buried moisture points interact with the biological activity already happening in your soil, the system stops being a clever hack and starts behaving like a living organism that feeds itself. That transition is where everything changes. Picture the next satisfying supply chain disruption. It doesn't matter what triggers it, a port strike, a fuel shortage, a storm that knocks out refrigerated trucks. For 9 days, you walk into the grocery store and the produce aisle looks like it was looted. Wilted lettuce at triple the price. Tomatoes that traveled 1,400 miles and still arrived bruised. People with full carts of canned soup and frozen dinners, panic visible behind their eyes. Credit cards swiping for food that will keep them alive, but never truly nourish them. Now, rewind to your backyard or your balcony, or that neglected strip of dirt beside your garage. You have 3 buried bottles silently feeding moisture to roots you planted weeks ago, a layer of straw holding temperature steady, while the rest of the neighborhood bakes or freezes. A trench beneath the surface where kitchen scraps became dark, living soil without you lifting a finger. You walk outside, pull a handful of greens, cut a pepper still warm from the sun, and eat something that never touched a truck, a warehouse, a barcode scanner, or a shareholder's profit margin. That contrast is not hypothetical, it already played out in communities during recent shortages. The people who had even a small productive patch didn't stand in lines. They didn't refresh delivery apps, hoping a slot would open. They ate quietly, calmly from soil they understood. What you built across these techniques isn't a garden hobby. Hobbies are optional. Hobbies get abandoned when life gets busy. What you assembled is a closed loop: nutrition from decomposition, moisture from gravity and capillary physics, temperature regulation from dead plant material, doing exactly what it does in every forest on Earth. The system doesn't require your daily attention. It doesn't send you a subscription bill. It doesn't depend on a single corporation remaining solvent or a single highway remaining open. This is what food sovereignty actually looks like at the household level. Not a political slogan, not a documentary you watch and forget. A 2-liter bottle with holes in it, buried next to a tomato plant, inside a bed mulched with straw, above a trench full of decomposing organic matter. Ordinary materials doing extraordinary work because they follow principles older than industrial agriculture. The person who depends entirely on the supply chain isn't free. They are convenient, they are managed. Every price increase is a leash pulled tighter. Every empty shelf is a reminder that someone else decides whether they eat well or eat poorly. You don't have to live inside that arrangement. The tools cost nothing. When the next satisfying disruption, satisfying arrives, and it will, because fragile systems break on schedule, you won't be the one refreshing news alerts, wondering how long the shortage lasts. You'll be the one walking barefoot to your garden bed, pressing a thumb into dark, moist earth 10 centimeters down, confirming what you already know. The system is still feeding itself, still feeding you, still answering to no one but gravity and biology. That isn't gardening. That is the quiet, permanent act of refusing to be dependent on a machine that was never designed to keep you healthy. It was designed to keep you buying.